everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Bat Around. I'm your host, Paul Valley. Joining me today from PigTown Sports, we have Zach Moore. Zach, good morning. How are you?
Doing great, Paul. How you doing today?
Doing well, man. Doing well. I'm getting that itch for baseball. We just a few weeks, I think we're about 3 weeks away from pitchers and catchers reporting to spring training. It's supposed to be in the 40s tomorrow, in the 50s by Wednesday. So starting to get that spring fever. You know what I mean? I'm ready for some baseball, especially after what happened with the Ravens last week. I don't know if I'm ready to talk about that yet. That was another demoralizing loss. Want to remind everybody, today's show is brought to you by Royal Farms. Royal Farms is heating up the grill. This winter, you can get any grilled chicken sandwich at your neighborhood Robo for just $6.99. Plus, it's just $20 for a 12-piece mix of their world-famous chicken. And they've got you covered for breakfast, too. For a limited time, combine any breakfast sandwich, perhaps one of their new Southern-style biscuits, plus their baby cake hash browns, and any size beverage for just $7. And speaking of breakfast beverages, try Rofo's new coffee and cappuccino flavors, mocha and horchata. Get to your neighborhood Royal Farms today. All right, Zach. We knew it was coming at some point. It finally happened. Anthony Santander, he is gone officially, signing with the Toronto Blue Jays. 5 years, $92.5 million. But, Zach, crazy deferred money in this deal. $13.5 million signing bonus with $6.75 million deferred. And then over the next 5 years, the max salary he's making is $16.5 million, both in 2026 and 2027. And all 5 years, he's got $10 million deferred. Then he has a $15 million club option for 2030 with a guaranteed $5 million buyout, which also could be completely deferred. And he has an opt-out after the 2027 season. The Dodgers started deferring money when they signed Shohei Ohtani, and now it's all the rage. It seems like everybody's doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I said it years ago. They should have never let Machado walk out the door. And I don't care if you had to defer $200 million down the line. Like, you could have found a way to sign him. I don't necessarily hate deferred money. I mean, Bobby Bonilla was the first one to do it, and he's set for life because of it. Chris Davis, the same way. Like, you can get yourself in trouble and then know the next following year you're going to get more money. Not that these guys should do that, obviously, but the security blanket is there well after your playing days, which is really good for the player. I just wonder how it affects the team down the line, and how it affects baseball down the line. Because eventually, like, the Dodgers are going to have $1 billion to deal with. I mean, that's a lot of freaking taxes. And eventually you wonder, like, when states and governments are going to kind of step in and be like, hey, you're costing us money. No more. And I wonder if it ever, I don't know if they even have jurisdiction to ever do that, but it makes you wonder, like, I mean, California, I think, loses out, what did they say? Almost $90 million in taxes this year. Like, that's not going to fly too much longer.
That's crazy. How does that even work? So you're saying that the deferred money is costing taxpayers $90 million in California?
Yeah. Yeah, because, I mean, think about all those taxes that the Dodgers players would have had to pay to the state of California. They don't have to pay it right now.
Mm-hmm. And so somebody's got to.
Right. Well, not that they have to. It's just they don't have that income that they thought they would have. I mean, look at Shohei. Like, eventually, when Shohei gets that money, he's likely not even going to live in the United States, so he doesn't have to even pay that California tax. So California is missing out on a lot of money.
Wow. I didn't even think about that. By the time Shohei Ohtani's career is over and all that deferred money comes, he's only making, $2 million a year? Because he makes $50 million a year in endorsements. By the time his playing career is over, he moves back to Japan. He's sitting pretty. All this money not having to pay California state taxes. That is unbelievable. Now, Zach, talk a little bit.
Santander's probably going to do the same thing. Like, he's likely going to move back to his home country and not have to pay Canadian taxes on that. Like, it's kind of smart for a lot of these international players.
So then with Andy Santander, because you were on the show a few weeks back and you were talking about how you have to, when you're a Major League Baseball player and you play for the Toronto Blue Jays, you have to pay U.S. taxes. And then you also have to pay the Canadian taxes, and you have to pay the state taxes in any city that you play in throughout the season. So for the people listening who don't understand it, for me, who's even lower than a novice when it comes to this kind of stuff. Explain how that works a little bit if you're a little bit savvier than I am about it.
I'm not the greatest numbers guy in the world, but I did look into it. And your U.S. tax rate is what, 30? At that rate would be 34, 36% or something like that. And then you'll pay, the 5, the 6% in Baltimore, the whatever it is in New York, 8, 9% when you do play there. And they do it by the day. So, it's all broken down. It's not a ton, but you do pay taxes in every state or every city that you do play in. But on top of all that, right, so you're paying 36 U.S. federal taxes. Then you have to pay 33 in Canadian federal taxes. You lose a lot of money. And think that $16 million a year for Santander is going to be like what, 7 or 8 maybe at the end of it, maybe less.
And so then he's getting that, and then by having all that money deferred, so he gets paid all that money after his contract is over. And if he gets paid that money and he's no longer living in Toronto, he doesn't have to pay those taxes in Toronto. Which for the player, when you're looking at it, you're like, dude, you've averaged what, 35 home runs the last 3 seasons. You just hit 40, one of the all-time power seasons from a switch hitter, and you're making $13.5 million each of the next 5 years, $16.5 million max. But then it makes sense because it's like, you know what, when I'm done playing, because this is the only big contract Anthony Santander is getting, unless he turns into Nelson Cruz, right? This is the only big contract he's getting. He can go home or he can go wherever the hell he wants, get out of Canada after that's over and done with, and get all that money, not have to pay nearly the same amount of taxes. It makes perfect sense for the player, and he gets to go to a lineup where he gets to be a power figure in an already powerful lineup. When you're looking at it, you're like, wow, that doesn't make a ton of sense for him. But now it's like, wait, it actually does. Yeah.
Yeah, and I see in the comments here, Tony probably not going back to Venezuela. Even if he goes to Florida, it's not Canadian taxes. He's saving a lot of money regardless at the end of his contract.
Yeah, it's a really smart move for him. Randall says MLB should limit deferrals to 25% of the contract levels of free agent market. It's a fair idea, but you're going to have to wait to the next CBA. Those CBAs are in place. You can't adjust them until you come to the next one. With that in mind, Zach, when they do the next collective bargaining agreement, right? We had a lockout in the 2022 season. That sucked for everybody. Nobody wants to go back to that. Okay, yeah. And I don't know that we will. But with the Dodgers seemingly signing everybody, Tanner Scott, 4 years, $72 million with the Dodgers. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. Is this something that you think that Major League Baseball as a whole is going to explore changes to? Do you think the Players Union is going to be open to making some kind of changes, maybe having a salary floor or some kind of salary cap, some kind of loose salary cap? David Rubenstein spoke with Yahoo Finance. We're going to get into that in just a couple of minutes too, talking about the potential for a salary cap. Do you think that that's something that we could see in the future, given what we're watching the Dodgers do, seemingly having an endless supply of money?
Yeah, I think the player union is going to for sure push for a floor because that ups the amount of money that all the players are going to get, because teams have to spend money at that point. You can't just look around for the cheap dumpster diving bullpen arm. You're going to have to spend $2 to $5 million on every arm. If every team had to spend, we'll say $120 million, like that's what, 7-8 teams that have to spend more money. More free agents are going to make more money. Not that like, I don't know if that still puts teams to be able to compete with the Dodgers. Money wise, could other people compete with the Dodgers right now? Yeah, they could. It's the culture is why the Dodgers have a stranglehold on everybody. When they landed Mookie Betts, it was a game changer. And then when you landed Freddie Freeman, that's why Ohtani went there. Like if the Dodgers kind of just had a couple good players, like Will Smith and Max Muncy, do we think Ohtani goes there, even if they paid him more? No, because it's the Angels all over again. But when you have Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman in that lineup and Clayton Kershaw, why wouldn't you want to go there? Mm-hmm. And then Ohtani brings everybody else with him because everyone wants to win. And I don't blame them. But where I think people kind of get a little misconception on the Dodgers is Tanner Scott was a free agent for a long time. Anyone could have signed him. anyone. And he took less money to go to the Dodgers. That's where that culture thing comes into play. I believe they said Boston had a 5th year and more annual than what the Dodgers did, and he still chose LA. That's the stigma that's going to be hard to break, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to break that. And teams, look, San Diego's doing it right now, and I feel like we could put Baltimore in this conversation right now. They're trying to build up first before they spend the money, because that's what the Dodgers did too. Their minor league system every single year is great. All their facilities internationally in U.S., everything is great. Their culture is great. The Orioles, the Padres, and the Phillies are all kind of trying to do the same thing, where eventually they can get to that point where they can get with the Dodgers, where everything else besides the money. Baltimore's probably behind the other two places because of what's around the stadium. San Diego, obviously better weather, but they're working on it. Other teams, I think, have seen that mold the Dodgers built, and they're working on it too before they can just go splurge out all this money. Because think about it. I mean, if you got two of the same contract, $300 million, like you're going to pick LA because you got a chance to win.
Yeah, and speaking of picking LA, look, there have been some great teams that we've seen. We watched the 98 Yankees win 114 games. We watched the 2001 Mariners win 116 games. This Dodgers team, can you remember in your lifetime seeing a roster this stacked? It's legitimately an all-star team. They legitimately have an all-star team.
It's not even an all-star team. This is a Hall of Fame team.
Mm-hmm.
They got, what, four Hall of Famers on it right now?
Yeah.
Kershaw, Mookie, Freddie, and Ohtani.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Is there any more? Potentially.
I mean,
not that jumps out yet, but
some guys, if their path continues to go along, like a Blake Snell, if he continues to go on the same path, if he wins another Cy Young, he ends up winning 200 games, and his ERA is 3.5 or lower, I could see him being a Hall of Famer. I don't know that he's going to pitch long enough to win enough games to get in, but if he wins 3-4 Cy Youngs, you're talking about a guy who could potentially be a Hall of Famer. But the guys you listed, Mookie Betts, Hall of Fame, Freddie Freeman, all these guys, the 5 years from the day they retire, they're Hall of Famers.
First ballot.
First ballot, 100%. Yeah. Speaking of which, I don't want to get off on a tangent here. Ichiro gets into the Hall of Fame. I don't care that he didn't get one vote. If Cal Ripken, it wasn't a unanimous Hall of Famer, then why should anybody be? You can't make an argument that Cal shouldn't have gotten every single vote. Mariano Rivera, I get it. Ichiro, Ken Griffey Jr. All these guys every single person should have voted for these guys. So I'm not going to get up in arms about Ichiro, because there's plenty of guys who deserved every vote. And Billy Wagner, happy for him, his final year on the ballot, he gets into the Hall of Fame. CC Sabathia is the one that kind of is a head scratcher for me, because he never won a Cy Young. Wait, did he win one? I think he may have won one.
I think he won one, yeah.
I think he won one Cy Young. Okay. But career ERA of 3.74, 250 wins, 61.8 B-WAR, which is 5 wins above replacement, less than the average Hall of Fame pitcher. Mike Mussina, for example, pitched one less season than CC Sabathia, and Mussina had more than 20 WAR more than Sabathia. Yet Mussina got in on like his 5th ballot, and Sabathia got in on his 1st ballot. And I guess if you're whether you're a 1st ballot Hall of Famer or a 5th ballot Hall of Famer, Hall of Fame's Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
But do you think CC Sabathia should have gotten in on the 1st ballot? I think there were only twice in his career that he was maybe the best pitcher in this league.
So when I was reading into this argument a little bit, and I believe, don't quote me on it, but I believe he's like one of 3 left-handed pitchers to do what he's done in his career. And I think a lot of people took that into consideration. They're leaving Pettit out, because of the steroid stuff, which is another conversation in its own. I mean, if David Ortiz can get in, Pettit can get in. Mm-hmm. But as far as a left-handed pitcher goes, he's a top 5 lefty among all those stats right now, mainly because there's just more dominant right-handed pitchers. Mm-hmm. I think that's what a lot of people took into consideration, is just what he did from that side of the mound. But I mean, the class wasn't particularly strong either.
Sure.
And next year's class isn't any stronger. So I think you're going to go through a lull for a little bit of a couple years until we get to some of the guys that are playing right now. Some guys are probably going to make it that shouldn't have.
I don't think you're getting a single first ballot Hall of Famer next year. I think the Nick Marquez might have one of the strongest cases, and he's not close.
No.
So I don't think you're getting the first ballot. Some of they don't want to have a year where they don't vote somebody in. So next year is going to be one of those years where you see somebody get in who's just shy of it right now. Maybe Carlos Beltran is one of those guys that gets it. I think next year is probably his best shot.
Andrew Jones better get in. That's all I'm gonna say.
10 consecutive Gold Gloves, and he's a guy who had a ton of home runs, and he was, hitting 2 home runs in a World Series game at the age of 19 years old in 1996. Yeah, Andrew Jones. I feel like he fell off a cliff towards the end of his career. But there was
guys do.
Yeah, no, that's true. Not everybody's David Ortiz or Nelson Cruz, like we said. But for 10 years, he was arguably the best center fielder in the game after Griffey kept getting all those injuries. So I hear you on that one. I don't know, man. I felt like there was a lot of New York bias. I feel like if CC Sabathia had pitched his entire career in Cleveland, he probably doesn't get in on the first ballot. But
he probably doesn't make the playoffs as often towards the latter years either. And playoffs, CC dominated some of those games, so they take a lot of that into consideration.
And the dude was a dog on the mound. Let's be realistic. He was a dog on the mound. You didn't want to face him. But, there's a Hall of very, very good and the Hall of Fame. And I don't know, first ballot for me is a little head scratching there. Today's show brought to you by Help My Gambling Problem. If you or a loved one has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit helpmygamblingproblem.org for free confidential services. That's 1-800-GAMBLER or helpmygamblingproblem.org for free confidential services. All right, Zach. So David Rubenstein had an interview with Yahoo Finance the other day. And they asked him about the Orioles, and he described the payroll as, and this is according to the MASN Rock, the article by Rock Kabako on his blog, MASN School of Rock. Rubenstein described the payroll as consistent with our needs and added, I don't think anybody is not playing with the Orioles because of money reasons. Spending the most money doesn't always guarantee you a World Series championship, he added. And in fact, many times people with smaller payrolls have won the World Series. I'm reasonably optimistic we're going to do well this year. He also explained how the luxury tax works with a penalty incurred for teams going over it and said, it's not a perfect system. It's better than nothing, but at some point I think we'll have something closer to what the NFL and NBA have, but there's no guarantee of that. So on the surface, if you're a casual fan and you see these comments, you think to yourself, he's saying we're a small market team. He's saying that a lower payroll teams that he's not going to, you're reading into it as he's not going to spend the type of money that these other teams are, despite being the fact that he's the third richest owner in all of baseball. When you hear these comments from David Rubenstein, what's your initial reaction?
I think it's just par for the course. He didn't say anything that would make me lean one way, would make me lean the other. The whole salary stuff and the CBA, he's right. There's no real penalty to going over it. Mm-hmm. I think you get 3 years before you even face a penalty. The thing that they don't really talk about is once you do get to that, you lose your small market value. You lose the money that you get from Major League Baseball. You lose the money that you get from the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Mets and stuff like that. Do they want to get to that point? Probably not. And that's just free income. I think they want to get to a point where they flirt just under that line. So, and what people don't understand. So, and I was reading into the whole Anthony Santander thing. Because they already hit that mark last year and they signed him, they lost their 49th overall pick this year and $500,000 in international money.
Wow.
The Orioles don't want to get to that point where they're losing draft picks and they're losing international money because they signed a player. The Yankees and stuff like that, I don't think they really care.
No.
Until they don't have enough international money to sign Sasaki. Then it becomes a big deal. Look, his comments were basically just, I'm not going to spend with the Dodgers right now. Mm-hmm. I'm fine with that because as long as you spend with the Dodgers when it comes time to locking up Jordan Westburg and Gunnar Henderson and Adley and Jackson Holiday and Grayson Rodriguez. And they have a lot of money that's going to hit the books in the next, what would it be, 2025? The next 3 years after year 3. That's a boatload of money. I mean, you're looking to spend, if you retain those guys, you'll be spending more than the Mets and the Dodgers just to retain your own players. So his comments on that, I mean, basically, like I was saying, if they sign their own players and they get to that line, they don't want to sign another free agent at that point because then they're losing draft picks. And we know what Mike likes draft picks.
Yeah.
And that's fine because you can't build a team without a good draft. And if you're just giving away draft picks, it's hard to build a team without just consistently buying free agents every year. I don't think they want to get to that point. I don't blame them for wanting to get to that point because, I mean, look, with Toronto's system, pick 49 probably could have helped them a lot. Mm-hmm. Now, is Anthony Santander going to help them? Yeah, for sure. But long-term speaking, that pick 49 could have been another good arm or, another Gunnar Henderson type player. What was he, pick 42 or something like that? Like those high round guys. Yeah, but those high round guys they're a big deal long-term, and to lose something like that, I don't think they have an interest. The Orioles at least don't have an interest in doing that. I mean, whatever. Just spend. Look, they're spending money. I'm okay if they don't overspend right now because Gunnar Henderson's going to cost a lot of money.
And look, the last several years, one of the lowest, if not the lowest, payrolls in baseball. This year, their payroll is $156 million as it currently stands. That's 15th in all of baseball. When you go back to those 2015, 2016, 2017 teams, their payrolls were right about where the Orioles is right now. And we were talking about them as potential World Series contenders. Now, look, that's how we're talking about the Orioles right now. Also, they still have Jorge Mateo that they've got to figure out, who filed at $4 million. The Orioles countered at 3.1. So that's going to get you up to around $160 million. Are you going to go out and sign another free agent? Are you going to trade for somebody and take on their salary? You really don't know what's still going to happen over the next few weeks. And before we get to spring training and then into spring training. Orioles payroll is a lot higher than people expected it to be. Well, a lot higher than I think people realize right now. Probably not as high as we expected it to be with David Rubenstein taking over. But again, it's his first offseason running the team. And when you really think about it, you look at all the one-year contracts that this team has, and it kind of speaks to, we've got a lot of young guys who could be potential superstars, and we want to lock up most of them. And if you're going to do that, you can't sign free agents in 2024, 2025 to these big long-term contracts because then you can't pay your own guys. And the deferred money situation, that's going to be huge for the Orioles when it comes to locking up some of these guys. Now, the first name that you mentioned was Jordan Westburg. And we talk about Gunnar, we talk about Adley, we talk about Holiday. Jordan Westburg's a dude. And he's one of the most important players on this team. You saw what he was doing for this team. One of the best hitters in all of baseball with 2 strikes. One of their best hitters with runners in scoring position. When he got hurt, you saw how bad the offense got. Is Jordan Westburg a candidate to get locked up maybe before some of these other guys? Because he's never going to be the superstar that Gunnar is going to be and that Holiday could potentially be. But he's going to be one of those guys like a Trevor Story who's just going to deserve to get paid, who's going to be a key cog on your team. Could you see Westburg maybe getting locked up sooner than the other guys because it might be a little bit easier to get a guy like that done?
Yeah, so, I mean, look, he's 24 right now, turning 26, or 25, sorry, turning 25 some point this year, but he's a free agent in 30. So what do we got? 5 years from that, he'll be basically 30 years old getting his first contract. Mm-hmm. He's not getting 2. He's not going to get 2 contracts. It's going to have to be a big one. Locking him up now early and buying out some of them arbitration years, to me makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. Give him the deal that he would want now, because at 30, he maybe gets 120, maybe 150. Mm-hmm. But if you would offer him 160, 165 right now, buy out some of them arbitration years where he makes more money, maybe he takes it. I think Westburg's a guy I think Boris is probably going to push to the envelope. Same with Gunnar. If Jordan comes out here this year and hits 282, 31 home runs, 100 RBIs. I don't think they have a shot at locking him up because Boris is going to be like, let's replicate 2 or 3 more of those years and get you a $200 million payday. A lot of these guys make sense, but the problem is you run into is locking them up early and then something happens. Wander Franco being an issue. I don't think any of our players are ever going to go down the path that Wander Franco did, but he got locked up, got a lot of money, and now is no longer playing. A lot of these owners look at that and they kind of pump the brakes and they don't want to get to that point, but Jordan Westberg and Gunnar Henderson are probably 2 dudes that I would throw a lot of money at and don't care if I overpay.
Yeah, and you look at a guy like Westberg in 2023, one of the reasons that the Orioles didn't make a significant splash at the trade deadline is reportedly a lot of teams were asking for Jordan Westberg, and Mike Elias essentially made him untouchable. And if that's the case, and he knows that he's going to be 30 before he gets to sign a big free agent contract, I can see if the Orioles come to him and be like, hey, we want to buy you out of we want to buy out the last few years of arbitration, maybe give you an 8-year, $160 million deal. Maybe something like that gets it done. You also look at a guy like Brent Rooker. What Brent Rooker did last year, hitting 290, 39 home runs, and then he signs a contract that the average annual value is $12 million a year because he gets his first big contract in his early 30s. You know, Jordan Westberg is looking at something very similar to that. Despite the fact that he was essentially a first-round pick and he's just 24 years old right now, for me, I think that Jordan Westberg, it would be very wise for him to try and secure his financial future and sign something now rather than taking a risk waiting till he's 30 years old. I think it makes a lot of sense. It makes sense
for the Orioles. And don't let him get to that point. You know, kind of like you said with Trevor Story, like that's a guy you would love to keep around for a while. And Tulowitzki was the same thing in Colorado. I know Colorado doesn't spend a whole lot of money, but they're players that you would want to keep forever. Like, find a way to get it done. And if somebody cheaper like Jordan, if you could lock that up early, do it. Because nobody knows the number that Gunnar Henderson is going to get. It might be north of $500 million. Don't wait on Gunnar. Like, get other keystones kind of locked up early. You know, if Holiday comes out this year and God forbid hits 300 something, steals 40 bags or something, then you're even in a bigger pickle, you know. But
and the realistic thing here is you're probably not locking up all of them. You know, if you're talking about, I think Adley's a shoe-in. It's hard to find a good catcher that's got offensive prowess. Now, look, the arm has left a lot to be desired, although he got a lot better towards the end of the year. But Adley's like a team captain. He's great behind the dish and calling a game. He doesn't allow pass balls, and offensively, he was hurt last year. You won't convince me otherwise. I think he's going to have a big bounce back year. But I think a guy like Adley, a guy like Westberg, and I think if you cannot face the same situation that you face with Manny Machado when it comes to Gunnar Henderson. So if that might leave Jackson Holiday on the outside looking in, which is crazy because he might have more talent than all of them, and he's the youngest. Like, he just turned 21 in December. It's going to be wild to see what happens with this team over the next half decade or so. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Today's show brought to you by Glenn Clark Radio. If you missed anything from Glenn Clark Radio this week, including conversations with football legend Sean Merriman, former Raven Mark Clayton, Navy Athletic Director Chet Gladchuk, and more, you can find them all now in the Glenn Clark Radio Week in Review feature at PressBoxOnline.com. And as always, watch or listen to GCR every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. at PressBoxOnline.com/radio, or right here on Facebook and YouTube. Zach, something very interesting that a lot of people have been clamoring for quite a while. Major League Baseball is going to test out robot umpires during spring training this season. And it's not what people think. It's not going to be robot umpires calling balls and strikes. It's going to be umpires calling balls and strikes, but each team gets 2 challenges, and I believe it's either the pitcher can challenge or the hitter can challenge a ball or a strike call. If you get the challenge correct, you keep the challenge. So does this mean you could potentially have 6, 7, 8 challenges, or is it like once you do, is it like the NFL where you get 2 challenges? Once you use the 2 challenges,
Are they doing it like the minor leagues where they got like one an inning or something like that?
No, it's
two for the whole game.
Just two challenges. But if you win the challenge, you retain the challenge. That's where like my confusion is like, does that mean you could have unlimited really if you continue?
Does it take away from like a challenge at second base on a steal or a tag out?
I believe they're separate, but I'm going to look into that because I'm not exactly positive. But I believe that
I've seen the videos in the minor leagues and I like it a lot. How many times have we seen late in a ball game either go for or against the Orioles or for anybody that matter? There's a bad strike 3 call that changes the inning. Runners in scoring position or something like that. Or, you know, a guy could walk to load the bases and he's rung up on a ball 6 inches inside. Like there's a lot of bad calls in big situations sometimes. And I've seen the guys in the minor leagues and they'll tap their helmet and they'll turn around and the guy looks up and it's either a green or a red light because if it hits the box or not. And that changes games when guys get it wrong. So to be able to just turn around and just ask, you know, even on the mound, like if you think that's a strike and you ask for it, and it is, or at the plate, it changes games for the better, in my opinion, because you're not taking the bat out of the hands of a guy that had a good eye and should be on base, and now he's got a K. So I like that whole thing. I don't think it, I mean, even in the minor leagues, it added like, I think they said like 19 seconds to the game or something like that. Because all you do is just tap your helmet. The guy looks up to the booth and they either flash a green light or a red light, and that's it. They already know if it's hitting the box or not. So I like it. I think baseball needs it because it's just far too many times we've seen it late in the game, runners in scoring position, and a guy gets rung up either inside or outside, just a complete unhittable pitch. You know, I want to see that guy swing the bat with runners in score position.
See, I like it, and I think it's one of those things that's going to be wildly successful in spring training. I wonder if they can implement it this year if it's successful in spring training. I don't know how that works if they have to wait until the following season to implement. I really don't know how that works, but I'm all for it. Here's a couple of things that I wonder. You remember that Angel Hernandez strike 3 call on the Joe Nathan pitch to end the game? And he said that the ball crossed the strike zone. It landed in the batter's box. But let's say that a pitch like that technically crosses the strike zone despite landing in the batter's box, and the robot umpire calls it a strike. What's going to happen when and if something like that
Well, they're going to show it on TV that, I mean, because look, it's not uncommon for a guy to throw a ball that moves, 2 foot. And if they can show it on its trajectory and it hits the corner and keeps going, you can't complain at that point because it shows that it hits the mark. Now, if they show and it's completely off and they still get it wrong, well, then it's going to be like the NFL and people are going to be all pissed off. But I don't think we get to that point. I mean, it either hits the box or it's not. I mean, AI has kind of generated it when it goes by the box, at least in the minor leagues. If it touches it, it lights up green. And if it doesn't, it just stays red. Like you said, it's big time moments and big time games where we kind of, those things get magnified. If it happens in the first or second inning, I don't think anybody cares. You probably won't get a challenge. It's the 7th, 8th, and 9th innings where rallies are killed because of a bad call, where this would really, really help the game.
Well, and that's kind of the thing that was the next thought that I had that kind of scares me is, let's say it's the 2nd inning and it's a 3-2 count and there's a pitch called a strike that the batter thinks it's a ball, and you're in a nothing ball game at this point. If the player can challenge it, how many times are we going to see a player challenge it, get it wrong, and now later in the game in a big situation where you need that, now you don't have it?
I think that's going to come down to the team. I mean, you're going to have some way to look at the dugout and see if the manager wants to use it or not. That's going to just add more pressure on the manager. It's going to add more pressure on the player. The player, typically, they're not wrong often. They're not going to look, when we were younger, we would be like, oh, I was safe, oh, that was a ball. It really wasn't. We were upset that we got out. At that point in their careers, they're not really like that. They know what's a ball. They know what's a strike. I don't think a guy is going to put his team in jeopardy because he just didn't want to get out. If they really think it's a ball, they're probably going to call it. And I think most managers will probably respect their decision on that because they're the one up there. I don't know. It's another element to the game where you're going to have to figure it out.
I think it's going to add a lot of strategy to the game, I think. And I remember seeing Paul Skeens pitching in the minors last year, and it was a 3-2 count. He threw a pitch. Umpire called the ball, and he immediately tapped his head. So the pitchers can do it too. And it got called a strike, and he was right. Like you said, these players, they know what's a strike. They know what's a ball. You know what I mean? I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think that people in baseball all around, I think the majority of fans and the majority of players, I think are going to like this system. I'm excited to see it.
And it's going to take the heat off the umpires. I mean, that Angel Hernandez call, that was bad. And, you know, if you can just challenge it and then, you know, they change it, like, you don't remember that because it didn't affect the game anymore. So, yeah, I mean, the umpire's an idiot. He made a bad call, but I mean, hell, the NFL refs do it every day, and they overturn those. So you forget about it because it didn't change the game anymore.
Yeah, and with the Orioles, we saw, I think Adley and Gunnar were two of the top guys in all of baseball in having balls called strikes on them last year. It felt like, no, look, the Orioles were like middle of the pack, maybe even bottom of the pack, and as far as teams that had looking strikeouts, but it seemed more egregious with this team because it seemed like it always happened in big situations late in games where they're watching strike three. Now, some of them, they're watching pitches right down the middle of the plate, and you're like, what are we thinking here? And they just got fooled in that situation. We're looking for something else. But a lot of times it's borderline to not so borderline calls that are going against them. And I think that's going to be huge, not just for baseball, but for the Orioles in general, because you've got a lot of guys on this team that have really good eyes.
Right.
You know, they see something.
And I mean, think about like a bases loaded situation, and it's a 3-0 count. We've seen, how many times have we seen an umpire just calls it a strike? Yeah, do we want the guy to hit? Sure, but when it's not a strike and you're calling it a strike, that changes the outcome because now he's got one strike. He's probably got to swing at strike two because he doesn't want to have a 3-2 count, and you might hit into a double play after that. Like this could change a lot of baseball games because now you score a run rather than hitting into a double play. Like it's a big deal, and they need to get it right. And I'm all for it.
Scott Wade says, "Go Robots! You can't tell me some umpires aren't biased against certain teams and managers and players." I think that officiating around the league. If you watch, what was that documentary on Netflix about the what was it? Pat Donahue, was that his name, or the Donnelly, or the referee who was who was throwing games in the NBA, and he said that, like, look, when you go to when your season starts, they tell you at the league tells you guys like Michael Jordan, they get more calls than other guys, and I think it's the same way. I think it's obviously that way in the NFL. And I wouldn't be surprised if, in Major League Baseball, some of these superstars, they get calls that other players aren't getting. That's just the nature of the game in all of these sports. So I do believe that, this is going to help out a great deal. Let's see if there's any other comments before we move on here as far as robots are concerned. I'm not seeing anything. But yeah, I'm excited to see how things play out, how things go with this this new thing being implemented in baseball. I like I like having the runner at second base in extra innings. Now they're only doing it the first 2 innings now instead of all throughout,
which I think is great.
I believe, like, isn't it? Yeah, I think that's awesome. I like the bigger bags. I like more stolen bases. It surprised me that the Orioles have a ton of team speed and didn't steal more bases. So some of these things that I really enjoy, even the shift where, like, you have to have 2 infielders on each side of the bag at second base with their feet in the dirt. And I didn't really notice a huge difference. I think a lot of these rules that are being implemented are better for the game. The pitch clock, you can make an argument that has something to do with a lot of these pitcher injuries. And I'm not so, what is the other one? Where they were talking about, what was the thing that Rob Manfred said was getting a lot of head of steam, and we were all up in arms about it. I haven't heard anything about it.
What was
since. This one was a complete joke. It feels like it went away pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think they just wanted to. I know what you're talking about. I can't remember exactly what it is. I think they just wanted to gauge fan interest, and then when they seen how bad it was, it went away.
Yeah. I can't even remember. The hitter.
Oh yeah,
You can take your best hitter and pinch hit them, give them another at bat at any point. Like that's stupid idea. Not all these ideas are built the same, but a lot of them I think are better for the game. And
Oh,
really,
I agree. I mean,
really
look, we want runs. We don't want 19 inning games anymore. So I mean, I get it. The ghost runner kind of sucks sometimes, but it speeds everything up. I mean, on a Thursday night, if you're out there, like, I don't want to stay out there till 11:30, 12 o'clock because it's an 18 inning game. Like, let's wrap this up in the 10th or 11th inning.
Right. Dude, I remember staying up to watch a game out in Seattle where Chris Davis got the game-winning hit in like
it was ridiculous.
Inning. It was like 4:30 in the morning here. The Stevie Wilkerson save out in LA. Like, I was so upset. My wife, she was just my girlfriend at the time. She's laying next to me in bed, and I fell asleep. And I woke up right after the last out, and she told me I missed the craziest ending to the game, and I was like beside myself upset. But it was 3 a.m. when that game ended. You know what I mean? That's why I love the Ghost Runner. It keeps the game interesting. It adds more strategy, and you're not staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning and missing big moments in the game because you couldn't keep your eyes open. Today's show brought to you by PressBox's annual Best of Issue, which is available now. And on the cover, we celebrate our Mo Gabba Sports Person of the Year honoree, Lamar Jackson. And inside, a collection of the top people, performances, and moments of the year in local sports. You can find the Best of Issue all throughout the region, including at 60 Royal Farm stores. And you can read it all right now at PressBoxOnline.com. All right, let's get into some roster construction here, Zach, and talk a little bit about some of these players that are going to be big for the Orioles in 2025. Let's start with the Orioles rotation, and I think it's pretty well set that the Orioles rotation is kind of locked in right now. They still may make a trade, but I haven't heard many rumblings about them engaged in trade talks for a couple of weeks now. So this may be what their rotation is, and if it is, you're looking at Zach Eflin, Grayson Rodriguez, Charlie Morton, Dean Kramer, Tomoyuki Sagano. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Cade Povich, and Albert Suarez. So I did a little bit of a breakdown of all these guys except for Sagano because he doesn't have anything in the major leagues to speak of. And let's start out with Zach Eflin. So last season, he made 28-plus starts for just the third time in his 9-year career. The two best years of his career have been the last two seasons. He's gone 26-17 with a 3.54 ERA in 343 innings pitched with just 48 walks. So the thing that stands out to me here, the last 2 years have been the best for him. He's been phenomenal. He was better than average when he got to Baltimore, and then he was just nails down the stretch for the Orioles. He was their best starting pitcher down the stretch. My question is, 3 seasons in 9 years with 28-plus starts. Is he going to post up for 30 starts this year? The Orioles need him. They need him. Will he go to the post 30 times?
I don't think so. He's always been he's had injuries, minor injuries, but he's always missed some time, and I think he regresses a little bit. It's very hard to do what he did last year and then to keep that rolling. Now, I don't think he's going to have like an above 4 ERA or anything like that, but he's going to regress a little bit. His health is a big thing. And if they can keep him out there, it helps the team. But I think you'll probably get 26, maybe 28 starts out of him. And that's just kind of just how he lines up in his career. Something dumb always happens, either be a sore back or he gets sick and those things happen. It's fine. But if he can give you 25 quality starts, I shouldn't say quality because that's a stat, but you know what I mean? Like get through the 5th inning kind of thing. If he can give you 20 quality starts, like a real quality start, into the 6th inning kind of thing, that would be great. If he gets me into the 6th inning 25 times, through the 6th inning, 20-ish times, I think that's fine if he doesn't make 30 starts. I think the Orioles are likely going to do a 6-man rotation for a little while just to kind of we really see it a lot in April and May where these guys kind of just get shelled. And it's not that they're not ready. It's just their arm is alive when it's 80-some degrees in Florida, and then you come back up here and it's 40. That's how a lot of guys get hurt early in the season, because your body's just not opening up like it did down in Florida. I think early on we're going to see a 6-man rotation. We're not, and we saw it last year too, even with just a 5-man. Brandon Hyde was quick to pull guys out at 4 2/3 or 5 1/3. Like they were out fast. And I think we see the same thing this year, but we see it with a 6-man rotation, and they get through May, and then we'll kind of start seeing like, okay, you've done this. Now you're built up a little bit, and then you'll start seeing a little bit more extended, which is going to cut down on the starts for everybody, not just Zach Eflin. But I mean, you get 4 guys that fish 25 plus starts. I think that's fine, especially with the age of some of these guys.
Yeah. And I think that their rotation, a lot of these guys, you don't have a guy that's going to come out there and pitch to a 2.85 ERA this year, but you have a handful of guys in your rotation that can give you anywhere between a 3.5 to a 4 ERA. And if those guys are making 25 starts each, I think that bodes well for your team, especially if you've got a strong bullpen. And I believe that the Orioles have a strong bullpen. I'd like one more piece, but I think that they're fine with where their bullpen is right now after the Kittredge signing. And Eflin last year with the Orioles, he got pushed back a start or two because he had some shoulder inflammation, if I remember correctly. So this is something that it happens a lot to a lot of players, and Zach Eflin's no different. And again, 28 plus starts 3 times in 9 years. It's something that you have to have in the back of your mind and entering the season, especially after what we saw, how decimated this rotation became beginning late May, early June. In 2020.
Yeah, I think if we get multiple guys that get you 150, 160 innings, because innings are more important than starts, in my opinion. You get that many guys getting above 150, 160 innings, I think we're in a good spot, because that's going to kind of take a little bit of a load off the bullpen too.
Absolutely. Now, Grayson Rodriguez, Zach, I think you and I are on the same page here in believing that Grayson Rodriguez is an ace in the making. He made just 20 starts in 2024, but he went 13-4 in those 20 starts. He had a 3.86 ERA. He had 11 quality starts, and he had 3 earned runs or less in 16 of those 20 starts. Pitched to a 2.43 ERA in those 16 starts. The other 4 starts, a 10.62 ERA. But I mean, that means that 80% of the time you're getting an ace performance out of Grayson Rodriguez, and you're going to sign up for that in blood to begin your season. Now, here's the thing. He made just 20 starts last year because he suffered a lat strain. He suffered a lat strain in 2022 that prevented him from making his major league debut. He lost 3 months of the season in 2022 and then lost the last 6-7 weeks of the season in 2024. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to figure out this lat strain, maybe change up his workout regimen. I don't know if he has to change up his delivery, but something's got to change because he can't keep missing starts like this, especially if you're depending on him being at the top of your rotation. Your thoughts on Grayson Rodriguez, what we could see from him in 2024, and does he need to prove that he can stay healthy this year?
I think a little bit is kind of overblown, a little bit. And I say that because I feel like the Orioles still baby him a little bit because he's still, 25 years old?
I think he's younger.
Yeah, so they're going to baby him a little bit. And it would be the same with Paul Skeens. If Paul had some kind of injury where he missed 4 or 5 starts, they're going to shut him down. They're shutting him down.
Mm-hmm.
It's not worth losing him longer. And I think the Orioles were in the same situation. He probably missed 3 starts where he probably could have made it. And Mike said, you know what? You're my horse. You're only in your second full season. Go home and we'll see you next year. Get your body right.
Mm-hmm.
That obviously that's a knock on Grayson because it looks like he can't finish, but a little bit it has to be kind of taken into account that the Orioles probably are still babying him. And I'm looking at his stats too. So like you said, some of the games that he gave up more than 3 runs, 4 times. And they're each in a different month. So it's like once a month, he just kind of just loses it. But again, it was his second season. So if he takes that and builds off that and he cuts that down to maybe 2 games, you're looking at a damn good player. And he shoved it against some good teams this year. And I mean, I'm looking down, he 5-2 against the Yankees, no runs. And granted, he had 2 starts against Seattle. He basically went 12 in an inning, no runs against Seattle this year. But he shoved it against Toronto. He shoved it against Boston. Shoved it against Tampa. He shoved it against Philly. Shoved it against Cleveland. Shoved it against Texas, San Diego. All those he left 2 runs or less. I mean, you're looking at a guy who's going to take that next step. And when you look from 23 to 24, every single category got better. I think we're going to see the same thing in 24 to 25. Everything is probably going to get better. He still gives up the long ball a little bit. Look, he throws a flat fastball. It's going to happen sometimes. Guys are going to sit on it. You're going to miss your location. They're going to hit it out. Whatever. You limit that. I think it's like 1.2 for 2 years in a row that he's had per game. If it's a solo, I don't care. I'll leave it at that. Yeah. It's like, I think we saw it in Houston and LA is when it was a multi-run home run is when it really bit him. And, both those games he gave up 7 runs. So if he limits that, and he's going to limit it, he's going to get better with age and stuff, and he's going to learn more. I think what I like the most is he had 100 more strikeouts than he had walks at 24 years old. Like, build off that even more. And you're looking at a guy who potentially, and I did a video about it. If he would have made 30 starts, he would have had top 5 most wins in baseball last year. And I mean,
absolutely. I mean, he had 17 decisions in 20 starts and 13 of them were wins. Like that's a ridiculous.
It was the highest in baseball, actually.
Ridiculous because he's keeping his team in every game that he goes out, with the exception of those 4 starts that you said were each in a different month. And what I remember about Grayson Rodriguez, for one, he was the pop-up, the biggest pop-up draft pick back when he got drafted. I think it was 2018, when he was the 11th overall pick, and he wasn't even being talked about as a first-round pick prior to that final season in high school for himself. And then he gets into the Orioles minor league system, becomes the number 1 pitching prospect in all of baseball. He comes up, has a little bit of success, but also got really knocked around a lot. It seemed like every other start, he was giving up 6 runs in 3 innings. Goes down to the minors, and then he comes up after the All-Star break, and he's throwing 101 and dotting on the black. Like what he was doing. And then that absolutely shoved to a 2.53 ERA after he came back from the minors in 2023 in the second half of the season. And that 8-inning shutout start against Tampa Bay down the stretch when you're trying to keep them at bay, that start showed me like this dude is a future ace in this league. And like you said, the progression has been noticeable for Grayson Rodriguez. If he stays healthy and he posts up every 5th, or in the Orioles instance 6 starts, that dude's going to go out there and be one of the best pitchers in the American League starting in 2025, in my humble opinion. And what we have to keep in mind, 1, he's just 24 years old, and 2, he's made 43 career big league starts. Legitimately 43. That's a season and a month, essentially, or a season and 2 months. This dude is still very young in his career, and I think that he's going to be talking about him in June as the best pitcher on this Orioles staff. That's
yeah. I mean, advanced scouts have said he has Cy Young stuff. I think we start to see it come out more this year. And I heard a rumor in 2023, and I have no credibility to it. It was a rumor, but it would make sense. He was tipping his pitches when he was getting shelled.
I think I heard that too.
Did you hear how they found it out? So this is where I was kind of going. So this is, again, it's a rumor. And I don't know if it's true or not, but it's just what I heard. That one of the guys that had faced him in the minor leagues had also picked up on it and was like texting his buddy back in college. And his buddy happened to be friends with Adley Rutschman and told him, and Adley told the top, and they went down, they fixed it. And that's when he came back and was just decimating everybody. Again, I don't know if that was 100% true, but it kind of leads up, and that's how kind of baseball players work.
Yeah, no, it absolutely makes sense. And he actually is 25. He turned 25 on November 16th. But he's freshly 25. He's still so young in his career. I mean, he's got a solid 10 years ahead of him, if not more, if he can stay healthy. And that's going to be a common theme with this starting rotation. You go to I have Charlie Morton slotted as the Orioles' 3rd starter, but I'm going to skip him and come back to him. I'm going to go to Dean Kramer because Dean Kramer has spent significant time, about a month, on the IL each of the last 2 seasons. Or two of the last 3 seasons. In 2022, he got hurt warming up on opening day. And that was I believe that was 2023 with Tyler Wells. But he got hurt warming up in the bullpen and missed a month. And then he came in. He was dominant his first month or so in 2022, but he has a rough patch every season. In 2022, he had a 7-start stretch from July 4th to August 11th where he threw to a 5.60 ERA. His final 10 starts after that, 2.79. 2023, 6.67 ERA in 6 April starts, 3.59 ERA his final 26 starts. And then last season, he had a 5.73 ERA over a 9-start stretch from May 12th to August 8th. He had an injury in there that cost him over a month. And then he had a 3.57 ERA in 8. He had a 3.57 ERA in the 8 starts before, and a 2.98 ERA in the 8 starts following that 9-game stretch. So Dean Kramer, 1, he's been hurt 2 of the last 3 years, and 2, he hits these patches every year where he's leaving his fastball up and it's getting knocked out of the ballpark. It seems like when he's in those stretches, the first 2 or 3 innings, he's shutting them down in order. And then in the 3rd inning or the 4th inning or the 5th inning, he goes out there and gives up 3 or 4 runs. And then he comes back out for the 5th and 6th and he's good again. Dean Kramer, 29-22, 3.85 ERA in 78 games, 77 starts. If you remember that game against the Blue Jays the day after Labor Day in 23, he should have made the start. Wells came off the IL after 6 weeks and made the start, went an inning, and Kramer then pitched 6 innings after that out of the bullpen.
Yep.
But so essentially 78 starts with 29-22 with a 3.85 ERA his last 3 seasons. That's going to be your number 4 starter. That's a legit number 4 starter. However, again, this is a guy who has been hurt 2 of the last 3 years. He's got to figure out how to stay healthy.
Yeah, and I another reason why I think we go to a 6-man is because it's usually early in the season where he gets hurt. And I like Dean. I think Dean's good. He does hit a bad patch. I mean, we saw Corbin Burnes hit a bad month last year. It happens. It's about limiting the damage. And I mean, he limited it well in 22. 23, he gave up a lot of home runs. And then he came back this year and gave up 9 less. It built off that. I mean, the strikeouts have went down a little bit. He's not a guy that, I mean, when you look at his career, right? 20, he had 4 starts, 21, 13 starts, 22, 22 starts, 23, he had 32 starts in the last year, 24. So he also doesn't have a ton of major league experience. He's got good stuff, though. And I think as a number 4, a lot of teams would like him as a number 4. Do the Orioles upgrade from him? Could they? Sure. I mean, look, if you want to sign Jack Flaherty and bump Dean out of the rotation and into the bullpen or trade him to somebody else, I don't think too many people are going to complain. But if you're rolling with Dean Kramer in as your number 4 or number 5 this year, I think plenty of people are going to be pretty happy with that. He gives you solid starts out of that spot in the rotation. Yeah. And it's just building off it. He's still a young guy too, isn't he? What, 27, 28?
Yeah, he's in his mid to late 20s. Like and it's crazy because he was like a piece of that Machado trade, but the Yusniel Diaz was the centerpiece of that trade. Yeah. And Kramer was almost like a throw-in. And he's become like the main
The only
guy.
one that panned out.
The only one that panned out. And like he's a legitimate big league starter who he has number 2 potential. And he's a guy that wants to post up. He is, and he's kind of funny in like how straightforward and dry he is with the media in his interviews. Like the dude is all business. He just wants to go out there and he'll say, I want to give you 200, 300 innings every year. I don't know that he's certainly not getting close to 300. I don't know that he'll ever give you 200, maybe once. But if you can get 160 innings out of Dean Kramer, most of those innings are going to be quality. I have a lot of faith in Kramer. Look, when you have your number 4 starter going up against another team's number 4 starter, and it's Dean Kramer, I'm going to take my chances. You know,
I'll take my chances over Dean Kramer against Carlos Rondon. Yeah, and Carlos licks a lot of money.
Yeah.
But as far as trust goes, I trust Dean Kramer more than Carlos Rondon.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm 100% with you. Rodon can give up a bunch of home runs. He can give up home runs in a flurry. You know, but I'm 100% with you there. Now, Charlie Morton, when the Orioles gave him $15 million, and then it was like kind of like he wasn't sure if he was even going to pitch this year, and now he's suddenly pitching for the Orioles for $15 million. I like the addition of his veteran presence. I think that is just as important as and I think you and I are on the same page with this. this veteran mentality and leadership is just as important as what he's going to do on the mound for the Orioles. This is this is a guy who's been a big game pitcher. He won a World Series game on a broken leg, right? And like this is a dude who's going to give you quality innings, but he's also going to teach these younger guys like Grayson Rodriguez and Dean Kramer and Kate Povich and Kyle Bradish what it means to pitch in the spotlight and pitch in big games and show up for your team. Last year, 8-10, 4.19 ERA. That has number 4, number 5 written all over it. But what I love about him is in the last 7 full seasons, excluding the COVID year, 25-plus starts, and he's got a 3.65 or better ERA in 5 of those 7 seasons. Look, the velocity's down, but that curveball is still nasty. He still gets a lot of swing and miss despite not throwing all that hard anymore. Charlie Morton is a sneaky good addition to this team. You and I agree he's going to be the number 3 starter, a lot of which because of his name, because of who he is, and he's earned that respect. He's really important for this team, Zach, in more than just pitching every 5th or 6th day.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and look, it's often overlooked. So he had 8 starts last year against the AL to a 2.54 ERA. So, I mean, he still showed, and I think the AL is better than the NL as far as hitters go. He still showed he can get guys out. And he only gave up 3 home runs in those 8 games. Yeah. That's a big deal for us. Now, the walks were semi-high. He had 21 in 8 starts, but he had 44 Ks. And they only hit 178 off of him with a 283 slugging. Not hitting him very hard. That's really good. I mean, come back and do that again this year. Look, and we talked about it before. If Charlie Morton stays below a 4 for the Orioles, you're looking at potentially 4 guys that are going to pitch below a 4 ERA. This rotation's a lot better off than people are kind of giving it credit for. Yeah. Now, I've seen people kind of laugh at Major League Baseball and some of the people that are kind of putting their rankings together. They value the Orioles a hell of a lot better than the fan base does. They have us ranked, 6th in power rankings or something like that. I've seen another one that has them as the 2nd best team in the AL. I think people realize around baseball, scouts and stuff like that, and players, this Orioles team is a damn good team. Yeah. It's just the fans that it's not enough for them. But Charlie Morton's gonna really help this rotation by more than just his veteran leadership. He's going to pitch really well for us, I feel like. And
he's got a long and good history with Drew French, which helps things too. And look, I don't think you can discount the fact that the Braves made the playoffs. They didn't make any noise in the playoffs last year. They were in it all year. But I mean, you're looking at it, if you're Charlie Morton at 40 years old, you're saying we're too beat up to win a World Series. And I'm not saying that he shut it down or anything like that, but
it's different.
It's different. It's difficult to get up the same way when you know that your season, even if you make the playoffs, you know your season's not going anywhere. It's difficult to get up the same way. And I think you add Charlie Morton to a young team with some young offensive firepower, some solid pieces in the rotation with a really good bullpen, and arguably when he's healthy, the best closer in all of baseball at the back end of your bullpen. I think that re-energizes a guy like Charlie Morton. I would not be surprised to see him put up a really solid season for the Orioles. And you never know. Maybe this is a guy who, I don't know that you bring him in to be a trade piece, but if you only have him for 1 year, $15 million, and you think Kyle Bradish is coming back and you've seen him make some minor league starts and he looks like he's good to go. Maybe you're looking at Charlie Morton and you're like, another team that's competing right now could really use him, and maybe we can get a bat if somebody's not panning out, or Tyler O'Neill is hurt, and you make a trade with Charlie Morton. So, like I said, he helps this team more than just what he does on the mound every 5th or 6th day. I think that he is we all kind of were like, ugh, when they made that signing, but the more I think about it, the more I like the Charlie Morton signing.
And he's been here too with young players. Like when he went to Tampa, they were young and they won. And then he goes to Atlanta, and Acuna was young, and Albies was young, and they won. And I mean, granted, you still had Freddie Freeman there and stuff like that, but he's been in this situation before around young guys and a young pitching staff and stuff. I mean, when he went to Atlanta, Strider was really young, Soroka was really young. I forget the other guy, but they were all extremely young. And the Orioles, I would say they're young anymore, but they're inexperienced. None of them really have a ton of starts. So he's been here before and he's excelled in those situations. So I think it's a bigger deal than what people are kind of giving it credit for.
Yeah, it's a signing where at first I kind of scoffed at it, but the more I think about it, the more I like it.
Yeah.
Tomoyuki Sagano, look, he's a 35-year-old rookie. Yeah, he was great in the World Baseball Classic. That was 8 years ago. They used the Major League Baseball in that World Baseball Classic. So he dominated. He dominated the U.S. team for 6 innings of 1-run ball when he made that start. But again, 8 years ago, one of the most accomplished pitchers in the history of the MPB. Won their equivalent of the Cy Young last year. He won 3 MVP awards over there, and I think he won 3 MVPs and 3 Cy Youngs, and none of them were in the same season. So This is a very accomplished pitcher. Whether he pitches out of the rotation, I believe that they brought him here to pitch out of the rotation. Whether he's out of the rotation or out of the bullpen, I think it's a good signing for this team. I think of Wei Yin Chen right off the bat, where I think that this is a guy that could come in here, and if he gives you 30 starts, I think his ERA is going to be below 4. I think he's going to give you quality innings and a lot of innings for that matter. I'm excited to see what he can do, but the book's out on it because we have no idea what to expect out of it.
Yeah, and look, I like him as a starter, and I like him as a bullpen piece too. It all depends on who really steps up, and it kind of he reminds me of Suarez last year. He's going to be a Swiss Army knife. He's going to be used probably at both positions. And honestly, if Felix isn't Felix, why not try Sagano as closer? Because he's got 6 pitches. You don't know what's coming. Right. I mean, at least with Felix on the mound, it was the same with Mariano Rivera. They only had 2 pitches. You knew it was coming. You still couldn't hit it because they were good. But if we don't get back to 103, if Felix is only throwing 96, he's going to get hit around hard. Yeah. And I think people don't realize that. He's going to get hit really hard. But you get Sagano in there who throws 95, 96, but then he has 5 other pitches that move a foot. How the hell do you hit that in the 9th inning? Yeah. It's not like you're seeing him for the 3rd time. No, you've got basically 3 to 5 batters that are going to see him, and that's it. It's not easy. And I think it gives them an option all over. Again, starting, back into the bullpen, middle of the bullpen. He's going to be Albert Suarez, in my opinion, this year. They'll leave Suarez kind of in that long to mid relief kind of guy that if they need him in the 5th and 6th, hey, get me to the back end kind of thing. Sagano's just going to be handpicked. It's going to be through the game. Unless he just, dominates all his starts in spring and they leave him in the starting rotation, then that's kind of a moot point. But he's just a guy I feel like that they look at that just helps the entire pitching staff, not just one spot.
Yeah, and you look at this team, you've got a lot of guys coming back, but a lot of question marks. Felix Bautista, Tyler Wells, Kyle Bradish, those 2 guys in the second half of the season. The Orioles, while nothing's been super flashy with this rotation they've added this offseason, they've added depth. They've added guys where these guys, like you said with Sagano, he could be a contingency plan for Felix Bautista if things don't go the way we hope with him. You've got a number of guys that can go and pitch in the back end of that bullpen now, which you didn't have last year. It was Craig Kimbrell, and if he didn't work out, shit, what are we going to do? You know what I mean? Yeah, and so it's that's why I think he's got the inside track of having a rotation spot. But if he ends up in the bullpen, it's not going to surprise me either. And I like how you compared him to Albert Suarez. We didn't know what we had in Suarez last year. We saw him go out and throw 3 innings against Philadelphia and strike out 6. And you're like, who is this guy? Right. Now, I thought that he was 35 last year. He just turned 35, I think, in October. So he's 35 now. He went 8-7 with a 3.76 ERA in 24 starts in 2024. 1-0 with a 3.09 ERA in 8 games as a reliever. What he did when Grayson Rodriguez got hurt with that pregame lat strain on August 6th, he comes in and throws 5 shutout innings against the Toronto Blue Jays, right? Yeah. And in the 10 starts the rest of the season, he went 4-3 with a 3.44 ERA, replacing Grayson Rodriguez. Now, look, he had 3 starts in September where he was awful, just awful. And he still, and he still pitched to a 3.44 ERA in 10 starts, replacing Grayson Rodriguez. You don't really know what his role is. He doesn't seem like he factors into their rotation, but he's going to be here. Unless he absolutely blows up in spring training, and even then, based on what he did last year, I believe that he's going to be on this roster on opening day. He's under team control. I look at Albert Suarez. whether he starts or whether he relieves, I think you're comfortable with him pitching for you.
He's better than Jacob Webb. So he could go and take over that spot. He's better than, Mike Baumann. So wherever he is, he's going to help the team. He's got to make a spot start. And this is where age is better, in my opinion. Albert doesn't get in his feels that he's not a starter because he's older. Same with probably Sagano. They're just here to win baseball games. They're mid-30s. They don't care about outside noise. They don't care about what mom and dad say. They're just here to play baseball. They're here to win. They're mature. And that helps the team a lot because, like you said, when Grayson went down, there was no flush of emotions that day. It was, all right, just give me the ball. I'll go warm up. And he went 5-6 innings. That's what veterans and older pitchers bring you. So to have Sagano and Morton and Suarez on your roster, it's just, they're all Swiss Army knives. It doesn't matter where you use them. They don't care. Just give them the ball, and they're going to go give you their best stuff that day. And I love Suarez for it. And I think Sagano is going to play the same kind of role. What does Baltimore need that day? Do we need you to spot start because Zach Eflin has a short shoulder? Okay, just give me the ball. I'll try to give you 4 innings. That's what Suarez brings.
The benefit of having this many guys who can start for you but also come out of your bullpen is if you have a Suarez or a Cade Povich or a Dean Kramer pitching out of your bullpen, and again, I think that Kramer's in the rotation, right? But if you have or Sagano, you have one of these guys who can start for you, but they're in your bullpen, and somebody, let's say it's one of those starts that Grayson gets lit up in 3 innings.
Mm-hmm.
These guys can come in and keep you in that ball game. If one of these starters gives up 4 runs in the 3rd inning and it's 4-0, you can have Suarez or Povich or Kramer come in and they can give you 3-4 innings of 0 to 2 run ball and keep you in that ball game. It bodes well for your team, and so that's why I really think that Suarez is an important piece of this pitching staff, not just the rotation, but the pitching staff as a whole. And then Cade Povich. Cade Povich is an important part because, look, this ballpark caters to left-handed pitching, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's harder to hit the ball out of the ballpark to left field. Cade Povich is the only left-handed starter that you have. He's the only one that you have. And stuff can be nasty. Walks a lot of guys because his stuff is so nasty. It moves too much at times. He had 5 innings pitched or 3 earned runs or less in 9 of his 16 starts this past season, which I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that. He had 10 games started with 2 or fewer walks. Now, look, he only went 3-5 in those 10 games started, but his ERA was 3.83. Mm-hmm. Then you look at what he did in September. 5 September starts, he pitched 27 2/3 innings, struck out 32 in those 5 starts, and went 2-3 with a 2.60 ERA. Now, we've heard it before. Spring training and September, we heard from Bucks and Water. Spring training in September can make fools out of a lot of people. But Cade Povich, he has the stuff to be a quality big league starter. He's the only lefty they've got. Do you think that he's got an inside track to make this rotation as that 6th starter if they're going to 6-man rotation because they want a lefty in there?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I would probably put him at 5 right now. I think they absolutely have to have a lefty. What I like about the whole depth thing is now Cade doesn't have to get in his own head that I have to perform. Mm-hmm. I have to go X amount of innings or – there might be a little point where, okay, there's a lot of guys and I have to perform kind of thing, but the pressure isn't there anymore to think that the Orioles are relying on me to make the postseason. No, dude, just go throw the ball. And if it doesn't work out, you're still young. You still got plenty of opportunities in this league. We have other guys. Just don't have any expectations. Just go throw the baseball. Don't overthink it. And I think that's going to play really well for him. And talk about, September, I'm kind of looking at his starts now. One was against the White Sox. Cool. He went 7 1/3, no runs.
That was a 10 strikeout game, right?
Yeah.
And no walks that game.
And then he went at Boston and gave up 4. And if I remember right, there was an error or something like that kind of led to a big inning. But, he went 4 2/3, gave up 4. But then he faced Detroit twice in a row. He went 10 innings, only giving up 4 runs with 15 strikeouts.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that was in Detroit and at home.
Detroit had the Orioles
Detroit was a
number down
damn
the
good
stretch.
baseball team. Yeah, they were a damn good baseball team in September. And then he finished up with the Twins, no runs in 5 2/3. And he only had 2 strikeouts that game. So he was just letting them put the ball in play. And that was in Minnesota. So, yes, September can make a fool out of you. But I would probably say 2 of those 5 starts were just against teams that were checked out.
Yeah.
You know, but you dominated Boston and Detroit. Well, you didn't dominate Boston, but you pitched well. But 2 games against Detroit, that I look at that as being pretty damn good. Detroit was not checked out.
Detroit made the playoffs. They got to the division series. You look at, I mean, you're going up against Detroit and the Minnesota Twins in those 3 starts, and his last 3 starts of the season. And those 2 teams were fighting for their playoff lives at that point.
Yeah.
The Twins weren't out of it yet. And then
they were game back.
Yeah, you face Detroit twice and you dominate them. Then you face the Twins and you dominate them. And like you said, only the 2 strikeouts, just putting the ball in play, for having them put the ball in play against you. Those are big starts and in big moments for a guy like Cade Povich. And I think that, maybe September can fool a lot of people, but I don't think it's fooling Cade Povich. I think Cade Povich is looking at that and saying, you know what? I proved it again in big games against good baseball teams. I can pitch in this league and pitch well. I think it just boosts his confidence.
He actually went 15 2/3 in those final 3 games, 2 against Detroit and against Twins. 15 2/3, giving up 6 hits.
Yeah.
Against teams that were fighting for their life.
He's a dude that, when he's in the strike zone, he's not giving up a lot of hits. He doesn't
ball moves a lot.
Hits. Yeah. And if he can harness it, as a lefty pitching out of that rotation in that ballpark, it could be a really sneaky good year for Cade Povich. He's probably the one pitcher that I'm the most interested to see what he's going to do. These other Sagano's up there, but like Eflin has that track record. Grayson's building that track record. Morton certainly has that track record. Same thing with Dean Kramer. Cade Povich, he could be like a make or break guy for this rotation. If he is as good as we think he can be, that's a really solid piece and a solid young controllable piece for your starting rotation. Today's show brought to you by County Sports Zone. Find every score from every high school sporting event all year long at countysports.zone. Proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. Now, Zach, it's 11:18. I have notes about some offensive players. I don't want to keep you too long. Do you want to run?
Yeah, we can hit a couple of them.
Okay, cool. So there are some guys with the Orioles that are the team is clearly counting on to take big steps forward. All right, so I want to look at some of these guys and see what the realistic expectations for these players who seemingly underperformed last year, and the Orioles need big seasons out of this coming season. First is Heston Kjerstad. I think this is an important year for him because Santander is gone. You don't know that Tyler O'Neill can stay on the field. Heston Kjerstad could be that left-handed power bat to replace Santander. First 21 games in 2024, he slashed .314, .417, .529, .946. He then gets drilled in the back of the head by a 97-mile-per-hour fastball in Game 21 against the New York Yankees. And then his next 18 games to finish the season, once he came back, 188, 278, 250, 528. Clearly, he was still feeling the effects of that concussion from that dome piece hit. If Heston Kjerstad is fully recovered, is he going to get enough playing time to prove that he can produce at a big level and replace some of that production from Anthony Santander? What are realistic expectations for him?
I think he's your starting right fielder. I mean, they drafted him 2nd overall. You didn't sign Anthony Santander because you had the confidence in him. Mm-hmm. Now, do I think he kind of rotates with O'Neill sometimes? I think, that depends on who's pitching that day. With the lefty on the mound, you probably see O'Neill in right field. You probably see Cowser in center. And, I mean, left field still remains to be seen in my eyes right now with the lefty on the mound. Could you maybe stick with Mullins in center? Could you maybe stick with Heston in right? I don't know. But Cowser just hits lefties better than Mullins. O'Neill obviously hits lefties better than most people in baseball. Left field's a big question mark. Does Tyler O'Neill just stay in left and then right field's a question mark? I don't know. I don't think the Orioles know either. Could it be Coby Mayo? I don't know if he makes the team either. That's a big question mark right now. And against lefties, I mean, against righties, I think you see Cowser in left. Mullins in center, and Heston will probably be in right field. He's your everyday guy, in my opinion. O'Neill could maybe DH because Adley's going to catch against a right-handed pitcher anyway. That's probably what you see. And with seeing more righties than lefties anyway, I think the Orioles for a while are going to DH Tyler O'Neill. Not that he's not a good outfielder, he still is, but just to keep him healthy.
Yeah.
Just one less thing for him to get hurt. You're running into the wall or running into another player or pulling a hamstring, whatever. It's just one less thing you have to worry about. Get him into June or something, keep him healthy, and then kind of start mixing him into the outfield a little bit more. But I still think they need to find another right-handed bat to play the outfield. There's not many available. They may acquire somebody. I've seen people asking about Austin Hayes. I don't hate Austin. If Austin came here and understood that he is probably the fifth outfielder and only to play against lefties, I'd be okay with it. But look, I don't even know why I just didn't think about it. There's the potential that you leave Cowser in left and you put Mateo in center field against lefties. There's options. I still think you need to acquire one more right-handed outfielder. I would love to go get Miguel Andujar cheap. Go throw him somebody in single A or something like that. They're going to take it. Andujar demolishes left-handed pitching, and he plays a pretty decent left field.
I think Brandon Krichik's still out there. I think that's
He is.
I know that you've spoken about on the show about how much you'd like to have him here. I would love for the Orioles to turn Coby Mayo into an outfielder. I think he's kind of proven that he's not an infielder at this point. You don't want to turn him into a full-time DH. He's got that 70-grade arm. Making him a corner outfielder, and with what that bat can become, I think that Coby Mayo makes a lot of sense being turned into a corner outfielder. And if they
Mark Trumbo.
Yeah. And like, if they haven't started doing that, I wonder why, it could just be because they have too many guys. One of those guys is Colton Cowser, who played a Gold Glove caliber left field and center field for the team this year. He finished second in Rookie of the Year voting. Colton Cowser in March/April and July, those 2 months, he slashed 315, 388, 577, 965. He had 10 home runs, 9 doubles, and 31 RBI in those 2 months. The other 4 months, 211, 295, 391, 686, 14 home runs, 15 doubles, 3 triples, 38 RBI. Colton Cowser has to prove he can hit off-speed pitches. He absolutely demolishes fastballs. But if it's something off-speed or something that's breaking, every now and again he makes solid contact with it. But more often than not, the at-bat doesn't look great for him. He's caught looking a lot of times too. Colton Cowser, second in Rookie of the Year voting, 242. He had 24 home runs this year. What's a realistic expectation for Cowser's step forward into his sophomore season?
Look, he sucked against off-speed pitching. I mean, pretty flank. He sucked. Yeah. I'm not even going to beat around the bush, and he'd probably tell you the same thing. He struggled, and a lot of rookies do struggle against off-speed. It's not easy to look at something that looks like a fastball and then just bites at your ankles. And he got caught looking with his pants down a couple times, like you said too. It's not easy to hit in the big leagues. But I think what we see out of Colton Cowser, I think he gets a little bit more consistent with the off speed, but it's not going to be like earth shattering. I think you see a guy that he's a 250 hitter in my opinion, with 30 home run type power. But it's the defense that sets him apart. Excuse me. Look, if you're getting 250 out of a guy, not everybody's going to hit above 250. But if you're getting 240, 250 out of this guy with 30-ish home runs and 80-something RBIs, like I think everybody in his fan base would take that. He'll make micro adjustments. He's still young. He's still got a lot to learn, but he's going to work on it. And look, we saw a big jump from Jordan Westburg in year 1 to year 2. And I think there's no different to think that we would see a decent jump out of Colton Cowser from year 1 to year 2. Same with Gunnar. I mean, year 1 was decent. Year 2 was better. Once you learn to hit the off speed, and both of those guys made that adjustment in year 2. And I think Cowser pretty much going to follow the same suit. Is he a excuse me? Is he a good enough hitter as those guys? I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah,
I just don't. He's not as good as them, but he's still good. So I think we see just a little bit more of a consistent guy. We're not going to see, like you said, 315 and then low twos. I think you'll see a more consistent, mid twos kind of across the board now.
And that's kind of what I want to see from him. I don't need you to hit 315 a couple months out of the year. What I would love to see is don't let your batting average drop below 250 in any given month, below 240 in any given month. We can't like he was as hot as any hitter in baseball the first 2 weeks of the season, and then he went 80 games where he hit like 180.
He never saw a fastball again.
Yeah, and it's like, can you make that adjustment? Can you be more consistent? Can you show up down the stretch for this team when when we're getting into the dog days of summer in August into September, and now you're playing games where you're making a playoff push here? Can you be that hitter that we need you to be? And like if he hits 250 with 30 home runs and plays the kind of defense that we know he's capable of, that's a damn good player for you. I don't like that we're talking about a 5th overall pick as a guy where we're saying just hit 250, but just hit 250, man. Just hit 250, and I think that's a realistic expectation for a guy who hit 242 as a rookie and had 3 consecutive months where he was ice cold. 80 games where he was ice cold. Jackson Holliday, first 10 games, 2 for 34, 18 strikeouts, 2 walks, got demoted. He didn't hit great. Yeah, I think he hit like 211 after coming back up. But his final 8 games of the year, 389, 522, 444, 966. He started walking a lot more, started making better contact, and it was when he got rid of that big leg kick and more of just a toe tap. Jackson Holliday is in a situation, you were the 1-1. You were the top prospect in baseball. You're very young, just turned 21 in December, and he should be an everyday player. But he's going to enter this season in a platoon at second base. He's going to play against righties at second base. But when there's a lefty on the mound, it's going to be Jorge Mateo playing second base. He's going to be in there against lefties. So it's up to Jackson Holliday. And we've talked about this exact thing on the show before. It's up to Jackson Holliday to prove that he can play every day and that he can hit left-handed pitching. I think that one day he's going to hit 320 in this league. I think he's got that kind of potential. What is a realistic expectation for Jackson Holliday in 2025? Are we talking about him kind of the same way we're talking about Colton Cowser, just hit 250? I
think Jackson's better than hitting 250. He's got a great eye. He set records in the minor leagues for walks. I think we see a more confident Jackson. We see, especially at the plate. Defense, I think we still are kind of hope and pray kind of thing. It's hard to learn a new position just with more time. I don't know if platooning him makes it any faster, which is why I think we still have some issues. But I see Jackson hitting 265, 270, and just a ton of walks. I'm really high on Jackson Holliday. I think he's going to really, really turn the corner this year. Probably end the season as the leadoff hitter. Just everything there.
I agree with that too.
He has it if he needs it. It's just confidence. And what I like about the change here, a lot of people don't realize it, but Westberg from year 1 to year 2 actually made a mechanical change to his stance. He got the hands a little bit higher. Colton Cowser from his first abysmal year to last year made a change in his stance. So it's not uncommon for guys to make adjustments once they've failed. And this stance change could be a big deal for Jackson. And why I like it more than anything is his head stays still. The leg doesn't move as much. And that's why Ohtani's so great. His head never moves. So, and Heston, I think we also see Heston's stance change a little bit. It's going to kind of knock down some of that leg kick. The head moves too much when you pick the leg up and then you got, a pretty hard plant down on the ground, and you can try to toe tap it like you're supposed to. It's really damn hard when a guy's doing 100 miles an hour to toe tap. So just cutting that out is going to be a big deal. And you mix in with the eye and walks and stuff like that, he's going to be a tough out. And if he uses the whole field like he did those last 8 games and he driving the ball to left center field and stuff, what do you throw him? Probably a little bit more off speed. Well, when you miss, he's probably going to hit it over into the Utah street. So I expect a pretty big year out of him, and I think the Orioles do too. They're going to put a lot of eggs in that basket, and I think for a bit we'll see a little bit of Jorge Mateo, but I think towards the end of the year that's Jackson's job, and I think he's going to take the bull by the horns, and he's just going to run away with it.
Yeah, I expect to see Jackson Holiday
really get some solid run, and I eventually. I think he's starting the year in the platoon, unless he just comes out and just dominates everybody in spring training. I think he's starting the year in the platoon, but I think he's the Orioles leadoff hitter by the end of June. Like you're saying, the end of the year. I think that he's that guy. He's going to be getting on base and hitting it high enough of a clip that they're going to say, let's move Gunnar into the 3-hole and get Jackson up at the top of the lineup. And then you look at it, Jackson Holiday. Between him, Gunnar, and Jordan Westberg, I think you're going to see 30 triples between those three guys.
You should see 70 stolen bases
guys,
too.
Yeah, when those guys put the ball into the gap, I didn't realize Gunnar stole 21 bases last year. Like when those guys put the ball into the gap, they can run forever. I think you're going to see a ton of triples out of those three guys. And Jackson can put the ball out of the ballpark too. You look at this Orioles lineup, and they've got 9 guys that can hit 20 home runs in a given season. When you really look at it, I think the only one that you're looking at, you're like, he probably can't hit 20, is Jorge Mateo. The rest of this lineup, top to bottom, can hit the ball out of the ballpark at a pretty high clip, and that leads me to Ryan Mountcastle. I think that the Orioles brought that left field wall in as much for Ryan Mountcastle as they did to attract a guy like Tyler O'Neill. He had the highest WAR and the highest batting average of his career this past season, but for the third straight season, his power and run production decreased. And for the second straight season, he missed 35-plus games to injury. He's a Gold Glove caliber first baseman. He's been a finalist at that position each of the last 2 years, really found a home over at first base. He hit 33 home runs as a rookie, and I think his high after that is 21. This is a guy who the Orioles don't really know what they're doing at first base if Mountcastle doesn't pan out, because Kobe Mayo hasn't proved that he can play there. You don't have anybody else in the system that's legitimately a first baseman. You have Ryan O'Hearn, but it's a head scratcher his inclusion on this roster at all for me. We don't need to. We've talked about that enough. Ryan Mountcastle, I think this is a big year for him, and if he can nobody has lost more home runs to Baltimore than Ryan Mountcastle. He's lost 11 since they put that wall in place. I think if he has that wall out of his head and he can just go out there and be Ryan Mountcastle, then the Orioles have expectations for him that he can get back to having that 30 home run power. And even if he doesn't, if he hits 270 with 25 home runs and plays Gold Glove defense, that's a guy who can hit 6th or 7th in your order every day, and you can be fine with
it. I expect a big bounce back year from Ryan. And look, he morphed his swing because of that wall, and he got better hitting the ball the other way, and he got better with runners in scoring position, probably not trying to hit a home run. Stay with that approach, but yet still swing hard at the ball in the inner half now. That just kind of expands his game. So when he was just a straight-up home run hitter, wasn't very good with runners in scoring position, and he wasn't really good hitting the ball the other way. It was just home run or nothing. I think he's a more complete hitter now, and then you just bring the wall back in, and now he gets to just free swing it to the pull side while still having, okay, I'm a really good hitter with 2 strikes hitting the ball to right field. Like, that's going to make him a complete hitter. And like you said, he hit 270-something. It was like 295 or something like that with runners in scoring position. If he does that again and pulls the ball, dude, he might have a really good season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Now, I've always been a big Mountcastle believer. I've thought that he could be potentially the Orioles version of Austin Riley. But each year we've seen the injuries. The batting average has crept up. I always thought that he'd end up being about a 270, 275 hitter at the big league level, and we're seeing him get closer and closer to that level more consistently each of the last 2 years at 270. The on-base percentage is never going to be where you want it to be for your first baseman. It just isn't going to be there. But if he can hit 6th or 7th for you in this order, play Gold Glove defense, hit that well with runners in scoring position. I mean, people talk about how do you replace the production of Anthony Santander losing 44 homers and 102 RBI. I'm going to steal it from Moneyball. You replace it in the aggregate. And if by replacing it in the aggregate, you replace it by getting
bigger seasons out of Ryan Mountcastle and Jackson Holiday. Adley Rutschman bouncing back after last season. Colton Cowser taking that next step. And then Gunnar being a 45, 50 homer guy that he can be and not letting moments get too big for him. I think you more than replace the production of Anthony Santander. But those four guys that we just mentioned, Kjerstad, Holiday, Mountcastle, Cowser, they are as big a part of that as anybody else. And I think that if they all have good seasons, take steps forward, this Orioles team is going to win a lot of baseball games in 2020.
I still think the Orioles are going to fight for the division this year. The Red Sox have done absolutely nothing to address their offense. They've done their bullpen is abysmal. They've done nothing, and they lost Kenley Jansen. So the Red Sox. I mean, Walker Buehler could come back out and throw another 5 ERA. Like, okay, Crochet's good, and then you got a couple other good starters. But you ain't scoring runs, and you don't have a bullpen that can slam the door. Like, you're not winning many baseball games, just like they did last year. The Yankees lost a ton of offense, and I mean, maybe Bellinger's a little bit better than Verdugo, even though they don't play the same position. But I'm talking about offensively wise. Anything was better than Anthony Rizzo, but the Yankees offensively are potentially. I don't even who's playing second base for them. I don't even think they have an idea.
No idea. Is it Jazz Chisholm, or are they keeping him in
exactly?
Third?
Right. Is it Oswaldo Cabrera maybe? Like, I mean, the Yankees lost a decent bit there. I mean, Torres lit it up in September, and he lit it up in the playoffs. Like, I understand he struggled all year, but like, this Orioles team can win 95 games right now. You go and add like a Jack Flaherty or another bat to it. Like, there's a damn good baseball team.
Yeah, they have the best young position player talent in the division, if not the entire league. And it's a lot of ifs. If this guy takes a step forward, if that guy takes a step forward, if this guy gets back to what he was. But other teams have as many ifs, and they're bigger ifs. Like, is Paul Goldschmidt what he was last year, or is what he was every year before last year? Is Cody Bellinger? He's never going to be the 2019 MVP. Is he what he was last year? Is he what he was in 2023? Or is he more the guy that we saw 2020 through? And
can he handle the New York media? That's going to be a big question. Mentally, can he handle it? He couldn't handle LA.
Exactly.
They ripped him up down there, and he crumbled. New York's worse. I mean, Cody Bellinger might hit 205, just because of the stress of the New York media.
We saw Randy Johnson get crumbled by the New York media. He was winning Cy Youngs every other year in Arizona and Seattle. He comes to New York, pitches to a 5 ERA, and he goes out to San Francisco, and suddenly he's the big unit again. It's New York. Carl Pavano. He went out there. His career ended essentially. Like New York also has a tendency to get every last bit of juice out of players.
Yeah, sometimes.
Well. Like, some guys go there and they completely revive their career because they're
sometimes.
Playing in New York.
I mean, Stroman hasn't, Rondon hasn't, James Paxton didn't. I mean, that might be the end of Bellinger after we know it. Who knows?
Yeah, it's going to be a fun season for sure. Orioles have a lot of opportunity in front of them, and it's also because football season just ended for us that it's like let's get into baseball here. I'm ready to go. Like, I'm getting more and more excited. I'm looking at this roster, and now that I've taken the glasses off that say I need an ace starting pitcher, and I need Teoscar Hernandez, and I need Tanner Scott in the back end of the bullpen. And I'm looking at this roster construction as the depth and the quality of players that they have. I think that this team is really, really solid and has an opportunity here. I mean, you're talking about a team that's averaged 91 wins the last 3 years, and they've got guys who are graduating and getting better and better and better. It's exciting to see what this team is going to be doing moving forward. Today's show has been brought to you by the CIAA tournament. Baltimore welcomes the excitement of the Food Lion CIAA men's and women's basketball tournament at the CFG Arena from February 25th to March 1st. Huge event, ton of fun, lots of amazing basketball. So go get your tickets now at Ticketmaster.com. Just get to a few comments before we get out of here today, folks. Birdland Sports Zone says, I honestly think that rotation is just as good, if not better, than the team that won 101 games. But on the whole, yeah. But you look at that 2023 rotation in the second half where you had Kyle Bradish and Grayson Rodriguez
and Dean Kramer, all pitching to a 3.2 or better ERA down the stretch. And then the veteran leadership of Kyle Gibson. That was a really good rotation the second half of the season. Like Kyle Brash, people don't realize his last 13 starts, his ERA was like 3.05. Grayson, the second half, 2.53. And Kramer had pitched his best baseball in August and September of that season. This rotation, I think it has good veterans. It has guys who have been there, done that now, and has an opportunity to pitch really well all year. But that second half 23 rotation was pretty damn good. PR3, I don't know. Do you know you know this guy, right? Yeah. It says, give me Tomoyuki Sagano Rookie of the Year. It'll be funny to rob the New York Yankees. I'm assuming you're talking about Jason Dominguez. I don't know that he's as good as people say he is. I also don't know that he's as bad as fans of New York's opposition want him to be. If Sagano wins Rookie of the Year, that would be huge. I'm not betting on it. But again, it's because, like we said, the book's still out on him. We have no idea what he's going to provide for this team.
I'll throw $10 on it. Whatever.
Yeah, why not? Well, the odds got to be pretty good. Wall Street window. The Orioles got all the players they need to start the season. Fans need to stop flipping out. They can make a trade around the edges during the season for playoffs. The vets will help big time. And I think that's kind of like what we've been talking about all show, is that none of these moves have been sexy, but they've been moves that were needed to make this team better. And most of this offseason, we talked about, is this team better than the team that took the field in October against the Kansas City Royals? I can't say that they are. You haven't replaced Corbin Burnes. But I do think that this team is better now and better equipped for the season than the team that ended 2024. But that's also, they had a ton of injuries. That team through June, one of the best Orioles teams I've ever seen. But since then, I think that this team is in a better position now.
Yep.
Daniel Pitts, FYI, Orioles pitching and catchers report in 19 days, February 13th. We're almost there, chomping at the bit. Randall, if Kramer can up his game, he could be the difference maker. He has the talent and experience. Time he wakes up. It's tough to say about a guy who's won 29 games and pitched to a 3.85 ERA the last 3 years. For his role in the rotation, he's what he needs to be. Maybe a little bit more consistency. Avoid those 7 to 9 start stretches that are rough. And I think that he can be a difference maker for the team. Randall also says the only one preventing Kramer from becoming a strong number 2 or ace is Kramer. I don't know, Zach. Do you think he has number 2 or ace potential?
Maybe. I mean, anybody could. They just got to figure it all
out. Can't stand Flaherty Montgomery. Rather see the Orioles stay pat until midseason trades. I don't think that Montgomery's coming here. I don't think that the Orioles are interested in signing Jack Flaherty at this point, now that they've got probably 8 to 10 legitimate candidates for their starting rotation. Wall Street window, I'd rather see what Cade Povich can do than Montgomery. They got to let some of these prospects have a shot. They already signed some vets, which is huge. Don't need more of them. I agree with that, but I also think that you're a team that you can't have guys figuring it out at the big league level. They kind of got, maybe that first month you allow that, but you've got to have guys who already have figured it out to move forward. So, gotcha. All right. We got to get out of here. I know Zach's got to go, and we just bought a house yesterday, so I've got a lot of stuff I've got to do also. So, want to thank you, Zach, for joining us. Appreciate the time with you, man. Always a great show. Always a ton, probably the most viewership we've had in quite a while on here for today's show. So, thank you for a great show. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Without you, we don't have a show. And thank you to all of our loyal fans, viewers, listeners. Without you, we do not have a show. I probably will not be here February 8th for a show because we're moving that day. And I've got a home buyer seminar, but that's a few weeks.